big clash for the Western world is Islam versus Christianity. And, people don't think about it in those terms because many intellectuals in the West think of themselves as secular, but it's a massive problem. And I'm hoping to conduct a whole series of conversations with Muslims, former and present, pro and anti, to try to facilitate a dialogue, because there's lots to talk about. I mean, I've studied religious thinking a lot, and I'm pretty ignorant about Islam because it's a complicated system and it's difficult to get into, but I can tell you that what I've read about Islam has not made me feel better about the chances of reconciliation between the Christian and the Islamic world. So, I don't know what to make of the fact, for example, if you look at the figure of Christ, and I don't care if you're religious or not, and I don't even care if Christ existed or not, and I certainly don't care at the moment about claims to divinity or the lack thereof. I'm just speaking as, let's say I'm speaking as a secular intellectual. As a figure, he's a figure of peace. I don't think that that's disputable. He wasn't a warlord. That's one thing that's for certain. He never led armies, whereas that's not the case with Muhammad at all. Muhammad was clearly and indisputably a warlord. And so it isn't obvious to me what to make of that, except that it's bloody complicated.
He had a child bride as well, I believe.
Yeah, well, that one is somewhat less problematic to me, because I think that you can write that off to the cultural mores of the time. Now, I know there's a weakness in that, but I don't think we have to address that. But when the founder of your religion spread that religion by the sword, it makes it rather difficult. And when your religion has been embroiled in a vicious civil war from the day of Muhammad's death, which is exactly the case in Islam between the Sunnis and the Shiites. That war started literally the day that Muhammad died. It's very difficult for me to see how that can be reconciled with the claims that Islam is a religion of peace.
Yeah, we saw that when Martin Luther hammered some stuff on a door a long time ago, and the Protestants and the Catholics just went their separate ways. And there's been some rough feelings over the years, I suppose, but no generational wars that I can think of. Right?
Yeah, well, there was plenty, as you said, there's been plenty of Christian schisms. But the other thing, too, is that it's not that easy to lay those at the feet of Christ, because just even merely as an archetypal figure, as the Western world's hypothesis of the ideal man. As a moral character, he was pretty much above reproach. And it's difficult for me to say the same thing about Muhammad. Now, that might be because I'm an ignorant, old Western white guy, but I'm doing my best, man. I'm a big admirer of Taoism, for example. There's great wisdom in Taoism, and I've found real value in so much of the religious reading that I've done. But I'm really stumbling with Islam. It's really hard for me to see it as other than a primarily political system.
And that's how it's being enforced right now. That's what ISIS is all about. They've established a religious caliphate, across the borders of two countries. It's less about when I think of religion.
Yep. Sorry.
When I think of the Christian religion, how it's applied here in my home state of Georgia, it's when we go to church and we tithe, that has very little to do with politics at all. There's this huge, massive separation between religion and politics for the most part in the U.S. There are moments of ambiguity and tempers flare over a monument on this piece of property or no, but that's as stiff as it gets. Like the scariest bit of that I can remember, some drunk fellow ran over a monument for the Ten Commandments a few months ago and tipped it over. Like that's what happens when. But
to your point, never, if you're not a Christian, Kyle, and you're Christian kind of alcove there in Georgia, no one ever is going to come to you and say you have to pay a different rate of taxes. You have to go to different stores. You have to.
The religious law will not be enforced as a law. I'm not going to lose any hands if I I can, the Bible has many restrictions that it places on Christians, and I ignore all of them virtually, but I know there's no religious police to come and kick my door in and drag me away and torture me and threaten my family and
well, and it's not, it's also there's other cataclysms that are that exist on in the conceptual realm as well. So, the states dominated by Islam are not economically productive, and that's quite an interesting mystery. And
they're not.
And many of the Islamic states that we purport to regard as allies hold values that are antithetical to our system. And Saudi Arabia is a classic example of that. And I cannot, for the life of me, understand, except in a psychoanalytic manner, why the radical feminists tolerate America's ally, the fact that America is allied with the Saudis. It's just it's not much different as far as I'm concerned than it would be if black people didn't say anything if America was allied with a black slave-owning state, which of course also happens in Saudi Arabia, by the way, and not so
with
in
the feminists. It's got to be because Muslims right now are higher up on the victim hierarchy than them. So even if it's way over there, they're not allowed to speak out against.
I think it's their unconscious wish for brutal male domination.
I don't think so.
Man.
I like that. That's fun.
I think it's the left's ability to apologize for anything that's wrong. I think the people on the left, maybe I'm just as crazy as you guys are. The Muslims oppress women. Oh, that's cultural. We need to understand that. Oh, guys think they're girls. That's, hey, we need to understand where they're coming from. Everything, they're so open-minded to everything.
Like excuse making.
Even if it's horrific.
Well, that's also the agreeableness, that we were talking about earlier. Yeah, because agreeable people agree. That's why the term exists. And so there is a real apology. And if you ally that with high openness, which is that open-mindedness, that's associated with creativity, you get agreeable openness. And that's definitely.
And then anything goes when you're agreeable and open. I'll call you Zer and I'll forgive you beating your wife.
If you're low in conscientiousness, anything really goes then.
Bill Maher puts it nicely when he says, the left would not for 1 second be okay with apartheid in South Africa, right? They were just banging that drum, hating it every second of the way. But for some reason, the oppression of women in Saudi Arabia has gotten a complete pass.
Yep.
And it's a real deal, Saudi
Arabia.
It's
a real deal, yeah.
Heck, just the driving thing alone. Taylor, can you hold that?
Yeah.
You broke up.
You broke up. We couldn't hear what you were saying. You're still a little frozen. So, but yeah, just taking away their ability to drive, right? Women don't have mobility without men. That is hugely oppressive. If you made that change in America and none other, then women would be stuck at home.
You actually don't see a more concrete embodiment of the idea of individual autonomy than the automobile. I think maybe it was the Soviet Union's import and then manufacture of the automobile that doomed communism, because nothing screams autonomous individual like a car, right? You drive it yourself. You can go on any road. No one tells you what to do. It's freedom. And the fact that women can't drive in Saudi Arabia tells the entire story. And so the fact, I cannot understand for the life of me why we are so blind in the West that we make the assumption that those people are our allies.